I lost 3 houses, I lost 4 cars. I was renting a house again with my wife and kids, and I didn't know if I was ever going to make another nickel in this business, but I knew that there were stories that I wanted to tell. And the 4 screenplays that I wrote in the next 3.5 years or 4 years have all gotten made. I directed one and produced the others and wrote all of them. So it does happen if you follow your soul.
I've been keeping in touch with Bobby Moresco. I met him 25 years ago at the Actors Gym. It was a place he ran in New York City where he taught and guided us, and it was a place for actors, writers, directors to work out, to hone their craft. And a lot of writers came out of it, a lot of actors came out of it. And he was very charismatic, very inspirational guy. And he influenced me a lot back then, his work ethic, because he was constantly working on his craft. On his writing, he was constantly working on it. Obviously, all that work paid off.
In LA, nobody touches you. We're always behind this metal and glass. I think we miss that touch so much that we crash into each other just so we can feel something.
You know, Crash blew my mind. The directing, Paul Haggis' directing, the writing, Paul Haggis and Bobby's writing. I gave him a call and I just said, hey, you know, thank you again for giving another inspirational film. I mean, these are the type of films that need to be made, and fewer and fewer people are making them. You know, I get a lot of independent filmmakers showing me their work, and it's about the image. The story doesn't matter. And for actors, you know, the story is important. The words are the foundation for us. So he said again, you know, anything I could do to help. So this time I said, well, yeah, how about, are you going to be in New York? And he said, I'm going to be in New York, and I have this incredible schedule, but we'll set something up and we'll make it happen.
I bet your
I
Diet
feel like
Coke.
I have to say something really important now.
We'll just photograph you. You don't have to say anything. We'll say all the important things for you.
How you doing?
Great.
Hello, everybody. How are you? Good. Thanks for coming down here tonight. That's really cool.
Bobby's got experience in so many fields. Acting, we share one actor in common. Live TV. One acting teacher in common, which is Wynn Hanman. You also worked with Peggy Fury on the West Coast before her passing.
Yeah. You guys know Peggy? Anybody know Peggy? Wonderful, wonderful human being. One of the great acting teachers of our time. And Wynn on this coast, absolutely.
Yeah, Wynn's still around. Wynn is still he's up there in Carnegie Hall. Then, while I knew you, you were working on your writing, and the effort you were putting into writing, you seem to be writing all the time.
I just had a gun pointed in my face.
You lower your voice.
And it was my fault because I knew it was going to happen. But if a white person sees 2 black men walking towards her and she turns and walks in the other direction, she's a racist, right? Well, I got scared and I didn't say anything, and 10 seconds later, I had a gun in my face.
You had this group, the Actors Gym in New York, which was, I mean, started out with 20, 30, started growing, and it did become the place where writers, directors, and actors wanted to go. And you were so nice to me because, you know, I have a mortgage payment that you could also help me with, actually. You were so nice.
No
to me. I remember
that.
I couldn't afford the Actors Gym. There was a membership really cheap, it was like $30 a month. But you said, well, we're shooting something, and if you use your camera, I ended up just being there for, I don't know, a year without. I was just the freeloader, Freddie the freeloader. But his experience with in acting as an actor, then working on his writing, then directing, which you would do, you direct us. You also were teaching us as an acting teacher and guiding us. And then producing. Can you talk a little bit about your experiences earlier than that, though? Growing up, in what area did you grow up in?
51st Street and 10th Avenue, Midtown Manhattan.
Which is known as the area is?
Other people call it Hell's Kitchen. We called it the neighborhood. You guys probably saw lots of movies written about it. Sleepers, which is one big lie, but that was about the neighborhood. There's a television show coming on NBC this year called The Black Donnellys, which is exactly about my experiences growing up on the West Side. We're doing it this year on NBC. My partner and I, Paul Haggis, wrote it and are executive producing it. You guys see Crash? Yeah. Paul directed Crash, and we did $1 Million Baby together. We did a television series called Easy Streets together, and lots of other stuff together. And so the new show, The Black Downleys, is about growing up on the West Side in Manhattan, back in the 80s and 90s. Actually, it was a little earlier, but we're calling it the 80s and 90s. Don't tell anybody.
What was that like? What was the, because it's changed, it's been, the areas have changed so much.
You know, everybody grows up in a neighborhood, but Manhattan, in the biggest city in the world. And they were, you know, everything that came with that is what it was like. Except, you know, you guys probably read the book, The Westies, you know, and all that stuff, and the Irish mob. And so we had this lunacy of growing up within all of our friends and family being involved in the Irish mob, but yet Broadway was 3 blocks away. And all of our mothers and aunts were ushers and usherettes. So it was over here and it was over there. Like, wow, this is nuts. Luckily, I wound up over here. A lot of my other friends wound up over there. But I remember seeing my first Broadway play. I was just a kid. And I said, holy shit, this is cool. And I knew all the ushers and usherettes and the ticket takers, so I remember one time walking down Broadway and I had seen every single show on Broadway and I didn't pay for one. You know, because they were all the ticket takers were family members and all the ushers and usherettes, and that's how I got involved from this neighborhood over here, getting, and the PAL. There was a tremendous human being by the name of Joe Horvath, who was the director of the local police athletic league. And today, and Joe got many people like myself off the streets. And if you walk on the corner of 52nd and 10th today, Joe was a young man when he died of cancer at 53. But if you walk on the corner of 52nd and 10th, it's Joe Horvath Street. And he was the director of the PAL. Isn't that wonderful? Yeah, and one of the things he did besides taking kids like me into the theater, he ran the local hockey league. And 2 of the guys that we played roller hockey with growing up are the Mullen brothers. You guys, anybody a hockey fan? Joey is the highest scoring American ever to play the game of hockey. He learned how to play hockey on roller skates with me. How cool is that? And Joe Horvath did that, local, and so that's what it was like growing up.
So you got influence, or you were seeing the theater. Did you know you wanted to be involved in theater at that point? What age was it where you decided, hey, I want to write, I want to direct, I want to act?
Oh,
Did it hit you suddenly, or did you slowly just?
No. It was nuts. I just knew what I didn't want. I didn't know what I wanted. I just knew I didn't want to be a construction worker. I didn't want to be a gangster. I didn't want to work on the docks where my father worked. I didn't want any of those things. And so I spent about 1.5 years drunk in the bars, hanging out. Anybody remember Jimmy Ray's?
Yeah, sure, Jimmy Ray's.
Oh yeah, I spent about 1.5 years in Jimmy Ray's because I knew that's where the other world lived. And a wonderful writer by the name of Leonard Cantor, Leonard wrote The Untouchables, said to me one day, you know, you should be an actor. I'm going to call my friend Win Hanman up. I said, okay. So you call Win up, and like the next week I'm in Win's class. I don't even know who Win is. I don't know if he's a charlatan or what he is. I didn't know the word charlatan back then either. And I wound up in Win's class. You know, a guy named Freddie Karaman took me in for about 3 months, and then Freddie, I graduated from Freddie into Win's class, and from there I tried to make a living as an actor for a while. And I guess in 1976, I really got tired of asking people to give me a job as an actor, and that's when I opened the Actors Gym. I said, fuck it, I'll write my own plays. I can do that. I don't know where I got the balls. You know, so I started reading lots and lots of playwrights and started trying to understand what playwriting was all about. And I started writing my own plays. And I guess we did about 3 or 4 early productions in the Actors Gym. I started putting myself to work as a writer and an actor. And the more I wrote, the more the members of the gym would say, hey, keep writing, stop acting. Keep writing, stop acting. And really, it all grew out of the Actors Gym. It all grew out of taking control by saying, I'm not going to sit around and wait for somebody to give me a job. Now, it didn't come easy. I had a wife and 2 daughters back then. I still do. But about 10 years of that, 1987, I had a play running 2 blocks from here at the Actors Outlet Theater. Is it still here? The Actors Outlet on 27? Richard Compton directed it.
Richard, past 3 or 4 years, it might have gone.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. 10 years later, about 10 years of doing that, just construction, bartending, waitressing, waiting tables, all that stuff. Security guard. Somebody saw a play I had running here in New York, a Warner Brothers producer, and he hired me to write a screenplay. Now, I had just written plays. Remember, I had to go and learn how to write plays. Now I had to go learn how to write a screenplay. Somebody had given me a job. So I went out and I got William Goldman's book, Adventures in the Screen Trade. I got Sid Field's book, and I taught myself how to write a screenplay. And I got another job after that, and I kept getting jobs as a writer. It was nuts.
Wow.
People would give me money to do that. And about 8 or 10 years, no, 1987, 1995, I got my first job in television. And thank God, from then on, 1995 on, I haven't stopped working. I'm really grateful for that.
Starting to understand the situation?
What do you want from me?
Unless you think your wife is gonna be better off with a husband who has a bloody stump for a head, I want you to sit down on that curb, put your hands on your head, and do nothing until I speak with these officers.
I'm not sitting on no curb. I'm not putting my hands on my head for nobody.
Do you remember what that first job was in television?
Yeah, it was Easy Streets.
Right, in Easy Streets, he was writer and co-producer. It was a winner of the Viewers for Quality Television Award for Best Program of the Year, and Time magazine called Easy Streets possibly the most profound drama in the history of television. And many people say that without Easy Streets, you wouldn't have Law and Order today.
Well, you wouldn't have Sopranos. You
Sopranos.
wouldn't. Anybody remember Easy Streets? Anybody? Thank you. It was a good show, wasn't it?
It was a great show.
You know, we put our heart and soul into it. But it all goes back to the actor Jim. It all goes back to taking control of your own destiny. Paul Haggis had created the show. We met. He had met me through a screenplay that he had written. I had written that he had read. And he asked me if I wanted to come aboard and work with him on this show. I didn't know what capacity. You don't get hired as a producer in television unless you've done it a long time. But I did a really smart thing. We hadn't been picked up yet, and Paul was doing all the work on his own dime. So he'd go in at 8 o'clock in the morning. I knew I was going to have a job if the show got picked up, so I'd go in at 8 o'clock in the morning. And he'd stay till midnight, and I'd stay till midnight. And I knew that was the way to do it. And sure enough, when a show got picked up, he said to me, "You're a producer." My first job in television, I was a producer on Easy Streets on CBS. But I worked for 4 or 5 weeks, made him 1 or 2 midnight, with no pay. What do you want to do? You want to hear me? Yeah. Want me to do that?
Yeah.
Good. So I guess the theme of whatever the hell I have to say is that for somebody to hand it out, go do whatever it takes. You know, my wife thought I was crazy. She said, "You can't do this," but I knew that this guy was a good writer, and I knew that was going to open a door, and I knew it was hard to get a job in TV. So I got hired as a producer, and they canceled us 9 shows later, but it was a hell of a show.
But it led to some other things, including Millennium. You were writer-producer on Millennium.
Yeah, right after Easy Streets. And
Golden Globe for Best New Drama of the Year.
Yeah, and it was a nice show. Anybody remember Millennium, Chris Carter?
But when people under 18 years old here, I have the adult audience coming later.
It's okay.
Most of us do remember it.
I'll be leaving soon. What happens in television, if it interests you in any way, if you establish that you can write fairly well, fairly quickly, you will always have a job, and you can get along with people. You'll always have a job, and that's what happens in TV. And that's what happened with me. I just went from show to show, and then I started creating my own shows a year after that, after Millennium.
Is there a common thread? We all know from studying acting, we talk about super objective spines. In writing, you talk about the major theme, the premise. Sid Fields talks about, what are you writing about exactly? Did that influence, were you able to sort of wed the acting training you had, technically, and also the writing, or did it just become part of a way of working for you?
No, it's a whole different muscle. The only thing that helps you when you're writing is dialogue. Mm-hmm. It'll often hurt you, though, because you'll write a good piece of dialogue and you say, wow, that's really cool. It'll have nothing to do with theme, it'll have nothing to do with character, and have nothing to do with story, but boy, it sounds fucking good. So, you know, being an actor will often hurt you as a writer. Now, as a director, being an actor is an enormous help. You know, the fact that you can converse with an actor on his level and talk about what's important, talk about the moment, talk about staying in the moment, talk about spontaneity, talk about what you're after, what you need to have happen in the scene, and what's in the way of it. Those are the kinds of things that most directors today can't talk about. And that's why we see a lot of bad work going on today. But so that's been a huge help. As a director, I haven't been an actor. As a writer, it doesn't help at all.
That's what we enjoyed at the Actors Gym. At the Actors Gym, when you directed, you always made it seem like it was the actor's idea. You knew what you wanted, but...
Oh, I was really smart. When I started directing, I did something really smart, man. Maybe the first thing I did smart in my whole life. I realized early on, when you're talking to an actor, the best thing that you can do if you want something is to make him think it's his idea that that you guys are after. If you say that was a really good idea to an actor and you know that's what you want, that's a great thing, as long as you're both going down that same path. And the truth of the matter is, it's got to be his idea anyway. He's up on stage. He's in front of the camera. When all is said and done, you can shove the director out the window. The actor is in front of the camera. The actor is on the stage. And if you're not giving him what he needs to deliver at that moment, then you suck as a director. It's really that simple, because you leave him alone out there. And he's the one that's got to deliver, not you. And any director who says it's mine, he's full of shit. Sorry.
I found Wynn was like that. He was a
Oh,
good director.
Wynn was always after the moment. What's the moment about? What's the moment about? What are you after here? What do you need here? Why? What happened yesterday? What happened a moment ago? How come? How come? How come? And the wonderful thing about Wynn is he also could work with directors, with the writers. Mm-hmm. You guys know, he produced a lot of early playwrights early on in the 60s and 70s. And as a matter of fact, I left it out in my little bio we talked about. After studying with Wynn as an actor, I went back and studied with him as a director.
Congratulations, you caught a cop killer.
Thanks. Too bad about your suspension.
I wish we'd been there on time. We take a mark on our record. It's okay.
Guess you weren't in a hurry to make a good call, huh? What?
Hey, Jack!
No, Jack, here we say. Let's go.
I got to tell you another quick little story about you being so kind to me. I don't know, you must be my Irish uncle, half Irish, half Italian, actually. I needed money. I called you up when you were doing Falcone. There's the shirt from Falcone right behind
Shit,
you.
I want one.
Well, you can have that one.
Can you imagine?
Yeah, that's the Falcone shirt there.
That's great.
I call him up and I find out he's doing Falcone, and I'm still trying to act, and I got this school going, but I needed some money. I was even though I had supposedly this big school, bartending still, and he says, well, I'm all cast, but maybe I can get you something. So I get this call from this casting director. Yeah, Bobby wants you to be in this Falcone thing, whatever I need part for you, but why don't you be somebody's stand-in? You don't have to do anything. You'll be making money. And I don't know if you know who Jason Gedrick is. He's like one of the most handsome men in the world. Okay?
And a terrific actor.
Yeah, terrific actor also. Young guy, handsome. And at the time, I'm like suffering from, I don't know what. I've got some adult acne occurring. I've got my hair down to here. I'm skinny with a big pot belly from beer that I used to drink. And so I walk in there and I said, I'm somebody's stand-in. And there's, stunningly beautiful Jason Gedrick. And I said, I'm your stand-in. Because there must be, they had to check it. Actually, I had to check this. But what happened was I just ended up hanging around. He gave me a hug. They treated me nicer. They kept the pony hair and the ponytail. I don't know what they were doing with that. But I made...
you made some money.
Well, I made enough to get my wife off my back for those bills. Paid off that $5,000 in 1 week. You had me there all the time. It was great. I appreciated that.
Not at all. It's the little victories that get us through, I promise you guys. The little victories.
Well, you maintain some connection because, I've met some, I won't mention the names. I know some people that I studied with or worked with. And sometimes I'll say to them, will you come and do just a question and answer at my studio? Or for filmmakers. I do, one of the reasons, as I said, I want these filmmakers to know it's about the story. That's the bedrock. And often, when I approach them, it's like I want their kidney. I'm asking for a donation of blood. But, so it's a very pleasant surprise.
Listen, I'm happy to be here. I learn as much sitting here talking with you guys as hopefully you might be getting from me. When you have the ability to sit here and talk out loud, things clear up. Oh, okay, that's really how I feel about that. You don't sit and say to yourself, how do I feel about things, until somebody asks you. So I get as much out of it as you guys. Hopefully you got something out of it.
With $1 Million Baby, so the framework was there, and it was basically a lot of the fat was eliminated.
No, a storyline was eliminated. They had taken 3 of the storylines, put it into the script, and it was a whole storyline we didn't need. Mm-hmm. So we threw away that storyline, redirected the focus of the story, the emotional journey. We didn't meet Hillary's character in that draft until page 27, which was nuts. If you guys want to write, William Goldman has a great quote, which is, don't be afraid to say what your story is about right up front. If you don't say it, you probably don't know it. And at that time, Paul didn't know what the story was about, and it was about Clint and Hillary's characters. And so in the rewrite, they met in page 3. And we rock and rolled from there, and it made all the difference in the world, and we got rid of one storyline.
That's one of the problems I see in some films that students send me. 25 minutes, I still don't know what's going on yet.
But you know, if you haven't said what the story's about early on, and when I say, I usually mean underneath the page. At least get a, you don't come out and say, hey, that's a love story, and you're going to really care about these people. You know, you say it in a way that's hopefully a little bit creative and hopefully a little bit underneath the page. But anyway, most younger writers don't get to the story. They hold things off. They hold things off. They hold things off. This is going to be great later on. Well, you know, I'm a studio executive, and I've got a lunch to get to, and I've got 4 other scripts to read. And if I'm not involved on page 3, I'm not reading the rest, guys. It's that simple. And it's not because they hate writers. They love writers. They want to love the script. They got to get involved in the story right away. If you're a writer, you better know that. They got to get involved in either the characters, the conflict, or the overarching story. And it's got to happen very quickly. Page 3 may be an exaggeration, but page 5 isn't.
Frankie, we are robbing a few computers. They belong to businessmen with expense accounts and checking accounts and every other kind of an account. And they got insurance. And they got insurance companies that don't lose because they raise the premiums. And they write those losses off in taxes. And who do you think pays those taxes? Me and you, that's who. So if you're asking me, there are fucking computers to begin with.
Paul and Al Ruddy optioned a book called Rope Burns. Those of you, if anybody's a fight fan, go buy Rope Burns. It's marvelous, man. It's written by a 70-year-old cut man who spent his life in the business.
FX Tool.
FX Tool. And 5 short stories. So they optioned the book, and Paul developed 3 of the short stories into a big rambling story that didn't work at all. And Al Ruddy didn't know what to do with it, and Paul didn't know what to do with it, and Paul and I had a history. I had just finished writing another movie and directing it, actually. I just finished post. So Paul called me and asked me if I would look at $1 Million Baby and consider coming aboard as a producer to develop the script. And I read it, and you know, when you come aboard late in the game and somebody's already written a script and they've spent 6 months there, they've done all the hard work, it's real easy to see the path. You look at it for the first time, you say, well, this sucks, that sucks, and we got to go this way. You know, you haven't spent your time in the muck, you know, so it's easy to look back and see that. So I took a quick look at it, and I said to Paul and Al, this is where I would go. And they agreed, and we cut one story out, and Paul and I sat down and wrote a draft together 2 weeks. And that was the script that went out to Clint and Hillary and everyone else. That was the script they could have done. Clint's the only director on earth who will say this. We called him up and said, you want some rewrites? He said, no, I like the script. I kid you not. No, I like the script. I mean, how are you going to beat that?
That's great.
And then what happened was we wrote it on spec, hoping to get it made. And then we wrote Crash on spec, you know, and we got Crash done before $1 Million Baby. And you know, my deal was I would produce. I came aboard as a producer, as I said, and I was going to produce it with Al, and Paul was going to direct $1 Million Baby. And then Paul and I wrote Crash, and we got the money for Crash sooner than $1 Million Baby. But Al, while we were shooting Crash, Al got $1 Million Baby to Clint. He said. He come back, he said, Clint says he'll act, but he also wants to direct. Now, you got to decide for yourself that that wasn't part of the deal why Al sent it to him. But we decided, well, we're doing Crash now. We can give up, Paul can give up directing, I'll give up producing, take co-producing, and we get 2 movies made instead of 1. And that's how Clint got to direct $1 Million Baby.
Now, if you have any more questions about your HMO plan, why don't you make an appointment to come in between 10 and 4, Monday through Friday?
Right, well, what does my father do about sleeping tonight?
I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
I want to talk to your supervisor.
I am my supervisor.
Yeah, what is your name?
Shaniqua Johnson.
Shaniqua, big fucking surprise that is.
Casting Crash. There was, I believe, the actor who played the part of Fahid, was it? A guy named Sean
Tube. Sean Tube.
Sean Tube. In mine was a more rotund, huskier type of character visually.
Listen, sometimes you have a real clear idea in your mind, physically and emotionally, what you want out of a character, and other times you wait for the actor to walk in the room and let him show you what it is because you're not quite sure. In that case, we always felt he was going to be a big, beefy, blue-collar guy who had spent his life as a brick worker over there. And when he came here, he found his new life in a grocery store, and he doesn't belong here. His hands are callous. He can't even open up the cash register. And we couldn't find that guy, and Sean Tube was a marvelous actor who had a whole thin, wiry feel about him, more a cop over in the old land, physically, than this guy we had in our mind. But he was marvelous, and he made us change our mind, and that happens sometimes.
It really worked, I'll tell you. The scene with the invisible cloak. Yeah, how did you get Michael Pena?
So this fairy comes into my room, and I'm like, yeah, right, you're a fairy. Anyway, we're talking, you know, and she's flying all around the room, knocking down all my posters and stuff.
She was flying.
Yeah, but she had these little stubby wings. I mean, she could have glued them on, you know? Like, I'm gonna believe she's a fairy. So she said, I'll prove it. So she reaches into her backpack, and she pulls out this invisible cloak. She ties it around my neck, and she tells me that it's impenetrable.
Michael auditioned, you know, the studio.
That's the locksmith, by the way, in the film.
Michael hadn't done much. He did $1 Million Baby actually after that, even though $1 Million Baby came out first. Michael auditioned. He had no quote-unquote name value, but he was wonderful. He had the earnestness that we wanted. And we, you know, and they kept bringing all these wonderful Hispanic actors with real good quality names, people who you all know. And we kept saying, no, but Michael's better. And they kept saying, yeah. And then we got Sandra Bullock, and then we got Brendan Fraser, and then we got Matt Dillon. And every time we got another name, Michael kept inching up. They didn't need another name. And finally we got enough name actors where they let us cast Michael. But it was a battle from the get.
I got to tell you, as an ensemble piece, the writing, just, you die for parts like that. It was great.
Thank you.
It was just a great film. I saw it again, and I'm going to be seeing it again.
It's a nice movie if you guys haven't seen it.
Yeah,
thank you.
It's a must-see, I think, for actors, just to see great actors.
Is it? I didn't know that.
Yes,
It's going what? What was that? It's going...
HBO.
HBO.
Great. I guess that's a good thing. I know we just won Best Picture at the Deauville Film Festival in France, so we're happy about that. Thank you. Thank you. You know, I'll tell you the quick story of the genesis of that screenplay, and it's really it's what we do. Paul called me up and said, you know, I have an idea for this story, and nobody's ever going to pay us to write it, and nobody's ever going to make it, but it's really a story worth telling. And I said, that sounds good. So we went and we spent 2 weeks, literally 2 weeks, writing the screenplay. We finished the screenplay in 2 weeks, and then we went down to the Actors Gym. And we read it at the Actors Gym with all the actors, and then we did another 2-week rewrite. And that was it. That was the total of writing on that movie. And nobody ever gave us any indication they were going to make that movie. But we thought it was a story worth telling, and that's the point of this story. If it's a story worth telling, go after it. Do whatever you have to do to get it done. That's the only question we writers should ever ask ourselves. If somebody out there who's writing a story and says, I'm going to get this made, you're following the wrong path, baby. If it's a story worth telling, that's the story you should write, in my opinion.
You talked about being relentless. You know, the racism, you kept digging at it. At times it was ugly. And I think you kept asking each other, are we going too far?
Yeah, no, it was the first 10 or 12 pages, we wrote this outlandish dialogue. You guys saw it. And 2 or 3 times we'd say to us, I'd say to Paula, he'd say to me, can we write this? And the answer always comes back, if it's truthful, if it's real, if it's what the story calls for, we should write it. Listen, it's about racism. Racism's ugly, and we're not going to write the ugliness of it. Then why write that movie? You know, then you're writing it to get it made, and then you're on the wrong path again. So whenever you're writing, you always got to check yourself. Am I writing the movie I want to write? Am I writing about something that's important to me as a human being and as an artist? And if the answer is yes, put that on the page. If you're saying to yourself, I'm writing for an actor, we never thought for a minute we were going to get all those actors. We thought we were writing a little tiny movie where we'd get some actors and hopefully make the movie. If you're writing for an actor, you're writing to get the movie made, you're writing for the wrong reasons.
You want a lesson? I'll give you a lesson. How about a geography lesson? My father's from Puerto Rico. My mother's from El Salvador. Neither one of those is Mexico.
Well, then I guess the big mystery is who gathered all those remarkably different cultures together and taught them all how to park their cars on their lawns?
What I would like to do now is talk to you about 10th and Wolf.
10th and Wolf, a movie I just wrote and directed with Val Kilmer, Giovanni Ribisi, Jimmy Marsden, Leslie Ann Warren, Brian Dennehy, Dennis Hopper, Brad Renfro, Tommy Lee. Imagine. Tommy was great. Tommy's like the greatest guy in the world. I had such a ball with him. But they're all, every one of those actors I just mentioned are absolutely wonderful. Another independent film. You know, after making a pretty good living in television, I was doing Falcone, Paul was doing Family Law. He was a real big shot in television. I was just a so-so big shot. I left. I couldn't write TV anymore because I was sick of it, and he left because he was sick of it. And I went and wrote One-Eyed King, which I eventually got made. Got no money for it, and Paul did this other movie that didn't get made and got no money for it. So about a year or so later, we started getting lucky with some stuff, as it were, that we got a little money in here and there, you know what I mean, that could keep us going. But after, I can just tell you this, if you're, and I can only talk for myself, I can't talk about any of you, but I walked away from television. I lost 3 houses, I lost 4 cars. I was renting a house again with my wife and kids, and I didn't know if I was ever going to make another nickel in this business, but I knew that there were stories that I wanted to tell. And the 4 screenplays that I wrote in the next 3.5 years or 4 years have all gotten made. I directed one and produced the others and wrote all of them. So it does happen if you follow your soul.
It was inspirational, and it made a lot of us feel that what we're doing is important, that the work we do as filmmakers, actors, writers, directors, really does have an effect on not just American society, but globally. You know, you touch a lot of people with a film, and the films that Bobby's making, along with Paul Haggis, are important works. And in my studio, I'm trying to encourage my actors and directors and writers to think about that they're not just doing it for the sake of, you know, to satisfy their own ego. That maybe there's something bigger involved. That art really can influence society and change society and maybe make, this sounds corny, but the world a better place.